Hey there, Divi lovers! After posting my recent video with 5 things I love about Divi 5, there was one thing that sparked your interest the most when I mentioned the powerful loop builder and showed you this testimonial slider which displays dynamic content. Each slide is populated automatically when I'm adding a new project in the dashboard. So in this video, I want to show you exactly how to create something like this in Divi 5. Hey there, my name is Anya, and my goal here is to help you build beautiful websites. This isn't going to be a long, everything you need to know about the loop builder in Divi sort of video. I wanted to make this super practical this time. I will show you how to implement custom fields with the ACF Advanced Custom Fields plugin, how to display the content from these fields inside my templates using Divi's dynamic content. And then I will show you how to create a loop, a list of posts which are also going to display these custom fields values for us. So let's get to work. Okay, so I have completely empty new Divi test website. First thing you want to make sure you have installed is the Advanced Custom Fields plugin. We're going to need that to set up our custom fields. Once this is installed and activated, you have this new ACF section in your dashboard. We're going to go to Field Groups, and here just adding a new field group. And I will call this project details because I am going to attach my custom fields to Divi's built-in project post type. I'm utilizing projects. I want the testimonials to be connected to each project. And before you say, but I'm not using projects, I just want testimonial slider. We'll get to that in just a second. I will show you how to do the same but with a slightly different approach. But first, let me show you how we're adding fields with ACF plugin. It's super simple. So I have my new field group name added here, and now first field, we have several different field types to choose from. Text is a simple input text short field, so let's give it a name, field label, client name. The name of the field will be automatically populated. We can edit that if needed, but this is a simple start, and I'm going to be showing you a simple approach so that we can go through that quite quickly. So yes, first field, client name. Another field would be client business name, just to separate these two so we can then possibly style them differently. Or we could replace the text field with text area and then allow the user to input 2 lines of text for both client name and their business name in one field. It's completely up to you. The structure of your custom fields can be whatever you need, really. Next field I'm going to add here is an image. It's going to be client photo. Okay, and then we could do WYSIWYG editor for the testimonial content. Okay, let's keep it simple. I have these 4 fields added. Now I want to choose where are these fields going to show up in the dashboard, and this is where we use rules here below. So show this field group if post type is equal to, like I said, I want to use project, and save changes. Now if I go to add a new project, this would be its title, and then these custom fields show up below. I have my client name, client business, a photo, I can add a picture here, and write the testimonial content below for each project. Now, going back to different post types you might want to use if you're not using projects, ACF also allows you to create different post types. Here in the post types tab, we can add new. Let's call that testimonials. singular label testimonial. The rest will be filled out automatically for you. Now, there are some additional settings you may want to go through in the advanced configuration here, but just to show you one thing you will definitely want to edit, in the visibility, you may want to change the icon here. So let's just go for a little quote. And now you have all these settings to change your labels and such. For example, we could disable the editor completely for that post type. I will show you how would that look in just a second. We don't need featured image functionality. Basically, all we need is a title and our custom fields, because for testimonial post type, the client name and the testimonial content may be all we need. So right now, if I save changes, notice I have a new testimonials section in the dashboard, just basically a new type of content I can now add. But before I get to that, going back to my project details field group, the name would probably need to be changed now, but I can use the same fields for my testimonials post type as well. So rules show if the post type is project or if post type is testimonial. Saving changes now. If I go to my testimonials, try to add new testimonial, I would have my title and then the same exact fields. Obviously, you wouldn't need to attach them to your projects. You would just set up your testimonials this way if you do not want to connect client testimonials with projects that you are showcasing for that client. Okay, so this is the initial setup. Now, to show you how we are actually using these fields on the front end, instead of just going one by one and trying to add new projects right now, let's go to my existing website where I've utilized the same basically the same approach. Let me show you my existing projects. I have 5 different projects here, and if I go to edit one of them, you can see I have similar fields set up. I have my client photo, client name, client company. I also added a URL field type for website or project URL, right? Then I separated the content with a testimonial heading, basically just so that I control which heading level is used when I display, first sentence slightly bigger and then the rest of my testimonial content. We could do that with the WYSIWYG editor. The headings would be styled, that would be contained in one text module later. But just to ensure that the proper H something tag is used, here I separated the two in the 2 separate fields, which is just also goes to show you can set it up the way that you require these informations later. It can be contained in one bigger fields with more text, or you can separate the pieces of information into as many parts, little chunks of content as you need. I have another field here for project description, which I am then using in my templates, because that's the thing. I'm not enabling the builder in here for a single project page. In my theme builder, I have a template for all projects. So all single project pages would use my custom body template. And in that template, we can pull these dynamic content chunks, the information that is stored for each individual project in these custom field values, and pull them into various modules inside our layouts. So for example, this heading module is pulling dynamically. Here we have dynamic content field. So just to show you and add a sample module. Let's say I will add a text module, and now this content is static. It's just a plain text. If I were to leave that module in here for that project body template, the same text would be displayed on each project, right? So instead of that static content, I can replace the text within that text module with dynamic content. And I can choose several of the predefined options, such as post title, for example, that's not coming from ACF, but I can also choose my custom field right here, first one on the list, and then from my custom fields that I've added just a moment ago, I can choose which one to display. Let's say I want to show, I wouldn't, but let's say I want to show a website URL. If I now save that, for example, and let's just go to a sample testimonial page. So here, my portfolio, not testimonial, sorry, sample project page. Right now, you see this is the dynamic content value for that custom fields. I just added random URL, Google in the project settings, right? And it's pulling dynamically, displaying as a static text. So instead of displaying a URL like this, we may want to show project description. This is exactly what's happening above here in that text module. And that is why here I see a text that's unique to that particular project. The dynamic content is not only available for your text field. For example, in your button module, the link, button link URL input field also accepts dynamic content. And this is where using website URL actually makes sense, right? So in here with that body template, by using dynamic content, you can pull all these different pieces of information and display them in a nice looking page layout, and then controlling the content later. Basically, all the control is only in the theme builder template. And when adding new projects, all you need to do is fill out these simple fields in the dashboard. End user who's adding new projects doesn't need to open the Divi Builder at all, and you have full control over several different parts of the template. You're not just limited to the post content module, which would be the module responsible for displaying the actual content, for example, like that's which would come from Gutenberg editor. So this is how dynamic content works. But now let's go to a sample page, and let me show you how we can pull these dynamic pieces of information and display them as a list inside a loop using the new Divi5 loop builder. The beauty of working with loops in Divi is that any content type, any section row, any module can become a loop. And what I mean by that is that we can loop through certain post type, for example, like projects, and for each project display a specific container, module, row, section, specific container dynamically for each project separately. Okay, maybe just instead of trying to explain it, let me show you, because what I meant by any module can become a loop. Why not? We use the Group Carousel, the new module in Divi5, so that we can loop through our projects, display the testimonial field values for each project, and showcase them in a nice carousel that is a slider. So that's super neat and simple. If we look at the layers panel, I have a column, a group carousel module, and inside a carousel item, carousel slide. And this is the thing that I want to duplicate for each project separately. So when editing the carousel slide, I will enable the loop here. Query type is post type, and instead of looping through posts, we will loop through projects, or if that would be the website where I've added a sample testimonials post type, you would see your testimonials here on the list. So that would work the same. But here my custom fields are attached to the project post type. So I'm looping through projects. Nothing is displayed here yet. So maybe I can leave all the other settings as default. You can choose different projects from different categories, order them, change number of posts. All the standard loop options are available here, but just to keep it simple, my slide is now getting duplicated for each project, but we don't see anything because there is no content in any of the slides. So let's go to the Elements tab. I'm still inside the carousel slide. Let me add a new, let's try heading module. Back to the parent. Now I have a heading. Let's add a text module below. Remember, I have the two fields for the testimonial heading separate from the testimonial content. So that would be my testimonial heading. Then this would be my content. Now let's add a group, because underneath my title and text of the testimonial, I want to show two modules next to each other, an image, and then next to that image, a client name and business name. So I'm adding a group, because this way I can control the alignment with Flexbox. That's another pretty big topic, but just like I said, making it practical inside my group. So I'm just going deeper into my structure, and in here I'm adding an image module. Back to the group settings, or just let's change the sizing here. Let's say this image is going to be 100 pixels wide, just a small image, and then back to the group settings, elements next to the image. And that's kind of maybe making it too complicated, but I want to show two fields, client name and client business separately. So I need another group, because I will position the image and the group of my multiple modules next to each other. So another group, inside that group, a text module. That would be my client name. Right now it's just static. We will replace that with dynamic content in just a second. Client name, and back into group text, another text module. And that would be, client business. Just so that you can see what I'm doing. This is my structure. I have a heading, text, a group that contains image, and another group. And that group, that first level group, I can go in here, and this is why I've created it in such a structure. I can go to layout and change the flex direction to row, so that my image is next to both of these text modules. Let's add a horizontal gap, 20 pixels. Let's align everything in the center. So now I have that group and that image placed next to each other. If I wouldn't use a group here, I would basically put my image, client name, and then their business as the third item in that same axis. So that's not what I wanted. That's why we wrapped these two text modules inside a group. Okay, so this is my still static structure. If we go to main group carousel settings, there is carousel settings, tab here where we get to control how that module looks. And one thing we can change is to decide how many slides we want to show. So let's say I want to show 3 slides. And like I said, even though we only see one slide here inside my group carousel contents, that slide is looping through project's post type, and it's duplicating itself the number of times we chose. I think there is a limit of 10 set up by default. We can change that. I only have 5 projects here, so it will show all my projects basically. And now it's showing the same values for each project because we haven't added dynamic content just yet. So in my title settings, in the heading module settings, the text, it's not static. Your title goes here, but we want to use dynamic content and just use loop post custom field, and from here choose one of the custom fields that are assigned to that that container that's being chosen as the loop item. We chose the project to loop through projects, and projects have these custom fields assigned, so I can choose my testimonial heading and apply that. So as you can see, it's already showing me dynamic values from each project separately, exactly what I wanted. Then the text module below, same story. We're choosing loop post custom field, and this time it's going to be my testimonial content. Apply, and here image module. Images also accept dynamic values, obviously. So here, insert dynamic content, loop post custom field, and just like that, client photo will dynamically show me the photo that's assigned to each project separately. And lastly, two modules, one for client business name, here dynamic content, loop post custom field, and from here we have client company. Apply. I also have a preset for that text module, small body text, just to make it slightly smaller. And now client name, also small body text, but we are focusing on the dynamic content. So here, instead of just static client name, we're pulling loop post custom field value field that's called client name. Apply. We can maybe make their name bold so it looks nicer. So yes, this is how it works. We can also go into Group Carousel, Carousel slide, or Group Carousel groups setting to change some additional design settings. I'm not going to focus on that, but just to kind of show you, let's add some left and right margin to our posts. Let's add a background maybe behind each item inside the carousel. We can then add some spacing. So let's go with 30 pixel values, just to show you how that looks. And just like that, we've created a dynamic carousel that displays our projects, even though we're not mentioning projects anywhere here. Let me check that on the front end. We are dynamically pulling the custom field values that were super easy to create, that are super easy to edit, and we can display them in whichever structure, layout, position we want. Really, it's unlimited. The possibilities here are pretty much endless. So I hope this little walkthrough was helpful and it inspires you to apply this similar concept to various different scenarios in your Divi projects. And remember, if you're looking for more than just random tutorials and you'd like to learn all there is to know to build professional, beautiful websites with Divi 5, I invite you to check out my Divi Stylist Academy. This is my comprehensive program, fully updated to Divi 5, where you get all the information you need and also direct access to me with weekly live Q&A sessions. If that sounds interesting, check the links below the video and join the waitlist to get notified when the next course edition starts. And that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for watching. Do let me know in the comments if that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.